So we're going to start the Planning Commission meeting for March 3rd of 2020. Everyone say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Must be Boy Scout.
Now I should say, what?
We've got the
My country.
One Nation under God thing.
Oh, is that?
Okay, we lost.
No, you did it right.
So, next step is approval of the minutes from February 2nd.
I'd like to move that we accept the minutes as written.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Isn't there something missing on here where, like, if there's not on the agenda? Didn't it used to say, like, is there any comments of something?
Right, it's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't put that on there because normally we're over there and we have the opportunity for the public to come up and talk.
Okay.
And however, if our guest wants to speak, we'll have him come up to the table and speak, and that we'll record him on this handheld mic.
Okay. Are you here to speak about the trees? Is that?
No, I'm just an interested citizen. I like the idea of trying to save trees.
Okay. Alrighty.
I didn't know what this meeting was really about. I thought you were getting ready to present it to the council for final approval, but that's not the case.
No, not quite.
No. Okay.
But I'm glad you came.
Yeah,
Because we always like to have people
Thank
come.
you. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's nice.
If you change your mind and after the discussion you hear something and you do want to speak, just let the chair know, and then we'll have you come up and record you and take your name.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So item number 3 on the for business items is the discussion of the tree canopy and significant tree code.
All right. So last meeting we went back to work on the significant tree and tree canopy code, and had questions, I think, from Commissioner Bernstein and a handful of other questions. I think, Stephanie, you had a few as well,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So we worked through those on the screen in the meeting and made some edits to the document, and so those are reflected now. I think there's still a handful of questions that we have for you as we get this ready to a document, ready to go, potentially for an April hearing before the Planning Commission. So that would be at your, what's the April meeting date, like the 5th? I can't remember.
10th? No, that can't be right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So to recap, we are moving forward with an ordinance that really focuses on ensuring that we have tree canopy long-term in the neighborhoods that we build, but also providing incentives to preserve significant trees. And I won't get into the details of the ordinance as we discussed last week, but I do want to bring your attention on page 2. We had, you see the word emergencies highlighted as item J on page 2, and we really were trying to think of what emergencies would exist that would make it impossible for somebody to come get a permit first or to be exempt from this code, and we really couldn't come up with anything. We already have a situation under F where removal of a hazardous, dead, diseased tree requires a letter from a qualified arborist, and we can't think of any other condition where you would need to just remove the tree and not get an arborist. And so...
Sorry. This did actually happen at my mother's house. We were in the middle of a windstorm. The tree had already fallen halfway over, and it was really close to the neighbor's house. It was a Saturday. I had no idea where a qualified arborist would have been on a Saturday, so I just called tree service and paid a ridiculous amount of money for them to come out and remove it. So that would be the only time that I would think that there would be an emergency. And how are you going to get a qualified arborist?
I think that could also fall under just a hazardous tree.
Yeah.
That's true, but removal of hazardous tree as determined by a letter from a qualified arborist.
So it's other emergencies where I guess How would you write a code that said that somebody can come cut down a tree and determine that it is an emergency as opposed to not? Because anybody who has a sick tree says, well, it was an emergency, I had to have it cut down.
Right.
And how do you distinguish between those two events? I think that's the difficult part of this. Obviously, if a tree falls, the tree is already down, and it's a matter of getting it off the roof of your house or.
Right. It just hadn't fallen completely, like the root bulb was slightly
Oh,
out of the ground.
Yeah.
Partially fallen or uprooted root system.
Do you not want emergencies in there?
Well, we have emergencies in there, but in those emergencies where something is a hazard, we're still requiring you to get somebody to certify that, yes, this tree is in fact hazardous. So how is a hazardous tree different than an emergency tree?
But I see the point. If it's the weekend, middle of the night, and a tree is like that, and the roots are coming up, and you don't want it actually falling in your house, you can't wait till Monday. You got to get somebody out there right then.
But isn't that? I mean, if that has already happened, that tree is not going to be saved. So at that point, what does it matter if an arborist
Right.
came?
Because it says in the code.
I know, but but to me, that's already a done dead tree.
Well, I mean,
And it's like, why
I
at
did
that
it.
point it doesn't?
I didn't tell the county.
So that's what we're talking about is how could we
Yeah.
change the code? Because even there it says removal of the dead tree, you need an arborist
Yeah,
letter.
that's.
So
Yeah, and that's for significant trees, not for smaller trees. But I suppose you could say emergencies such as storm cleanup, where a tree is partially fallen, or
That could work.
I mean, I don't know.
Was that tornado last year? Or the year before?
A year and a half ago.
You remember well because you were up all night or something, weren't you?
Yeah, that was a stressful couple of days. Okay, we'll try for something and provide some examples of what is an emergency, and maybe we should clarify under F that this is a tree that is otherwise standing.
Or could it be something like disturbed roots? Or I mean, I don't know.
You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you have to certify post emergency removal that it was fine
Yeah.
to do you? You'd like to avoid that?
No, and I think we're going to have a hard time if somebody takes the tree down and doesn't have evidence of what the condition was when they took it down. How are we going to show that they actually violated the code as well? So I'm not sure what the correct course of action is.
I kind of think so. If it was like her situation where the tree was leaning and the root ball was up, and she cut it down, and she's still going to have this piece down here that says, you can see that it fell.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of the emergency, and that kind of explains that you didn't need an arborist, that you knew.
Partially
So we
uprooted
can have-
trees that
Yeah.
pose a danger.
Suppose root ball, but what if you have a tree that snaps in half, 10 feet off the ground? 8 feet off the ground?
But again, you will
Or
see
snaps.
that. Yeah.
Well, if your tree man's going to come out and clean that tree up,
Oh,
he's going
that's
to take it out the stump too, and you're not going to see
You better
that.
take pictures.
We will try again to come up with some emergency language.
Sorry, I
in
didn't
that
think
section.
about it last time.
No, that's all right. We made the note of it, and we're like, okay, how do we write this code, and how is this different than what's in F? So, all right. The next question that we had for you on page 4 was you wanted a kind of guidance document for what trees could be planted as replacement trees when a significant tree does have to be removed, and so Carrie did some research and found a couple of examples. There's a tree planting guide from Paulsbo. There is one for Bremerton. And then there's also this King County native plant guide for Washington yards. And I've looked at all of them, and it seems like Paulsbo has a pretty strong emphasis on more decorative type landscape trees, more so than the native species. And for instance,
Same with Bremerton.
yeah, they don't really get into the native species, just your standard Doug fir and other plant types. And so we wanted guidance from you on what sort of guiding document you would like to have attached, and if any of these work better than the other. I think that the section definitely refers to those species native to the Pacific Northwest, and so I think that leans towards the King County example. But if there's trees on these other documents that are appropriate, I mean, we can have a much broader list, or we can have a narrower native list, and we need the recommendation of the Planning Commission on that.
Can we approach it from the direction of, for those trees used as a form of landscaping, they could perhaps come from this, but for those trees where a developer has gone in, clear cut everything, is going to build the homes, but trees around the perimeter,
Or a buffer.
or the buffer be a native species.
And it does say primarily be those species native to the Northwest, so it does open the door to these other things, but yeah, I kind of lean towards the King County example just because these are all things that you find in the woods here rather than...
Everything else is deciduous.
Yeah.
Of these other two, Bremerton's and Paulsville's.
Yeah, it's also really clear because I think you had deciduous has to be replaced with deciduous and evergreen has to be replaced with evergreen, and it's really easy to see on this.
Right. Okay, so the King County example is good?
That sounds good to me.
All right.
I think I wanted to put together a document too that kind of combined the best of both, so that you not just only had height but width, and also the recommended spacing for planting, which is in the Pulsper document. So that's what I was kind of hoping, is we could put something that has...
So start with this
kind of
table and then
guidance.
add some additional information.
That
Yeah.
Paulsville document's really good for, maybe not so much for developers, but for people that
Yeah, I think that's
are
really
working on
nice.
planning their yard. It's got some good information, it's real baseline stuff, but some people don't have a clue. So I like that. There's a couple things on the native plant list from the Western Washington that I think we should consider striking.
Oh, the King County one?
From King County, yeah.
What's that?
Red alder, big leaf maple. I mean, there's some trees that
Yeah, you don't want any more of.
you really, they're natives,
But they're
but do
actually
we want
excellent
them
for the soil.
replanted?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean,
If it weren't
I
for alders, you wouldn't get evergreens because of what they do to the soil.
yeah, and I think the big leaf maple is actually once the forest is fully matured, they take longer to grow, but they're more prevalent in an old growth forest than in a younger forest.
If they drowned out all the younger growth, if they're
Well, but,
fully
yeah.
mature,
Yeah.
then you get these spindly fir trees that have nothing on them for 60 feet. So there's a little bit of that concern there too.
I'm not a arborist or a forester, so I'm not going to...
But I thought you were going to be the one that went out and looked at people's trees.
we,
So you
we-
better do your research.
I've had some basic training, but no, it'll be my staff.
I like the list as written, and I wouldn't want to strike those two, the big leaf and the alder.
I think if you're planting into a buffer, especially restoring when you're a critical area, if they had to take down maple for some reason to get in there and do construction or clearing, maybe we would be okay with them restoring the same things back.
Absolutely.
We're all doomed.
It's a question.
We shouldn't be touching our faces. Trish just pointed out.
Do most people though, when they plant a maple tree, it's not like a big maple tree.
Oh,
Is
there's
it usually
hundreds of
just?
varieties.
But don't they usually just plant like the kind that don't get that big in your front yard?
Right.
You can, you'll find
But-
That would be non-native.
Vines.
I know, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, I don't know that. Can you even go out and buy a big maple tree?
Yeah, you can buy saplings.
You can?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't get out enough.
They also plant themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah, they-
they'll
helicopters.
show up in your
Yeah, I
grass.
know.
All right, so I think those are the only issues we had outstanding for the tree discussion, unless you all have questions about any of the red line changes. Hopefully everything looks good, and this is ready to go to hearing on at our April meeting.
Yeah, that's good to me.
That'll be on April 7th.
And it will be in an ordinance format.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we will advertise. We were going to try to have a hearing tonight, but we realized we didn't advertise it about a week before this meeting. So we wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to get public comment on the draft. So that'll happen next week.
We also need those questions answered.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Are we done then?
No.
There's another thing on the agenda. Unless you meant the trees.
No, I didn't mean the trees. Okay, so second thing, discussion recommendation from McCormick Community's request for revision to certain design standards.
So last meeting we brought to you a handful of items that the developer who has purchased McCormick North, that's on the north side of Old Clifton Road, they are working on their house plans for that subdivision, and because we tweaked some of our code this last year, they highlighted a number of issues which concern them, and they hope to have us take a look at and potentially fix before they get to the point where they're applying for building permits. And so they don't plan to start construction on the plat for another couple of weeks or months, but potentially would be building model homes in the fall. So we have a few months of lead time to work on these issues if we want to make any changes. And we outlined all of the issues in the last meeting, and we've made those changes now in red line based on the feedback we got at that first meeting. We did send the draft to the developer, and we realized we forgot to talk about one issue, and that's the handout that Carrie provided to you, which talks about the width of a lot relative to the number of side-by-side garage bays, because we're really trying to encourage houses that don't have a garage as the focal point of the house. We want a little bit more house and a little bit less garage visible from the street. They pointed out that 74 feet is the minimum lot width for having a 3-car garage. Was quite a bit more than what they've been building recently, and requested that be taken back to 60 feet, which they felt like was reasonable. And so if you have 12-foot garage bays, you're going to have 36 feet of a 60-foot lot dedicated to a garage. You've got 5-foot setbacks on either side, so that's 46 feet, which leaves 14 feet of house. So you have a fairly small amount of house with a 3-car garage, but that was the request that they had. And I think that given the
Wow. Seriously, talk about garage forward.
Yeah, I don't know if there's.
Can we see examples of what they've been building that they want to duplicate
what's
here?
one of the home builders out there?
D.R. Horton?
No, they're not building that.
Quadrant?
There's Mainview, which they're kind of the modern model. Mainview at McCormick. Let's see if they have a picture of some of their houses.
They want a 3-car garage because they have 3 cars or because they have so much garbage they want in the garage.
They're rich people that don't have garbage.
Oh, that's right.
Those are 2-car garages.
You enjoying your new job?
Perhaps. Yeah, I can try the. You all right?
No. We're talking about her job.
Well, we're waiting for our visual display.
Why isn't it giving me? Maybe they don't have any listings right
Maybe
now.
learn more.
Model homes? Oh.
Oh, there we go. So here's
Here's
one. The very discounted price of $672,000. And so that's showing, this might actually be a little less than 12 feet for a garage bay. I'm guessing these are 10 feet per garage bay. So that's probably, they're building that house right now probably on a 60-foot lot. And I can show you one of those lots actually.
Is that considered to be a 3-car garage, or is that a 2-car garage plus a golf cart bay? No, I'm serious.
yeah.
This
Or
is a
lawn
thing
mowing.
where my
Well,
dad
it's a
lives in
3-car
this
garage.
retirement community. There's a distinction made.
Okay.
That's a 3-car garage.
Okay.
Oh, don't we all have things to look forward to?
Well, this is a big thing in his community about
So
whether
I'm
you
going
have
to
a
take one of their
3-car
lots.
or...
So a typical lot that they
parking for that
own is. Let's measure that guy. That's about.
Oh, I know that function was there.
Yeah, it's about a 60-foot lot. Unfortunately, the aerial photo is old, and I don't think they show the houses there yet.
Oh, fun.
But
look,
they're
there's
building
one.
3-car garages on 60-foot lots here at Parcel D at McCormick, and so.
So it's working. So what do they want us to do differently?
Well, we adopted a standard set that said to have a 3-car garage, you now need a 74-foot lot. So you have a bigger lot relative to. And the problem is most of these subdivisions have already been designed with 60-foot lots, and they have buyers that want 3-car garages, and so I'm somewhat indifferent. I mean, I think the main thing is that you don't have only 6 feet of porch, which is what you were getting in the Ridge when Quadrant was building those homes in that subdivision. Is you had 6 feet of front door that was recessed 20 feet behind the garage, and then a 2-car garage on like a 40-foot lot. I think once you have that 14 feet of house, you're bringing some windows towards the front of the house, and it's going to generally be mitigated better than on some of these other designs. So, actually,
Yeah, you say there's 3-car garage homes on 60-foot lots out there now?
yes,
There are?
that they've been
Can you pull
building.
some of them up?
Well, this is the example. I don't have Street View out there, I don't think yet, on Google. So let me.
That house they just showed.
I'll
that's
double
the
check.
house my daughter's building right now.
Oh, really?
Oh.
But in Gig Harbor, not here.
Yeah, they turned around right here and didn't go into the.
So is it a full 3-car garage?
It's not all the way built yet, but it's that picture.
So yeah, I think what we're trying to avoid is really this house, which this is actually maybe 8 feet where this door is, but you can hardly see the front door or the front windows of the house relative to the garage door. And so if you added a third bay, number one, we don't allow you to project the garage door that far forward of the house anymore. You have to bring the house, the front door and the windows closer to the street. And with a 3-car garage, it's going to be more house to the side. I'm trying to think
To be
of.
fair, we're never going to drive in there. We're not going to find those houses.
I'm actually going to zoom out and go to Gig Harbor real quick and see if they. I think that same builder is.
They're building right behind the Ridge.
See what this looks like. Okay, so here's an example. That's probably a 60-foot lot right there. And so because the house is brought further forward, the garage door isn't quite as much of a dominant feature, even though it's a 3-car garage.
Yeah, it's not as bad.
Okay.
So out of that property, you got 14 more feet per lot. How many more homes can they stick on this property?
They've already had the homes approved. So,
So it's just a matter of design.
I mean, I can show you the McCormick North subdivision if you want to see it.
Do you just love putting up with us, Nick?
No, I'm happy to do this. It's a lot easier just to show you on the computer too. I'm glad we have technology now. When we first got here, our technology was
Maybe getting
really
in the bus
lacking.
and going out
SolidWorks.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
Oh, that 2019.
But we just need to go by ourselves.
McCormick
Why is that?
North.
Because we used to just go by ourselves. We didn't have to drag the
No, you're right.
council with us.
Yeah, no.
This might be it. Yeah, so this is the subdivision off of Figley Road. So they're doing the first phase of it. They actually had approval for 180 units, and some of them were going to be attached. They've reduced it to 84 units, and let's see if I can.
From 180 to 80?
Yes, because they had attached housing in there. They don't give me a lot of dimensions here, but I think most of these lots are actually too narrow for a 3-car garage. But I think on some future phases they want to be able to do 3-car garages on 60-foot lots.
So did you say that these people already have their lots and they already have their plans?
Yes.
So even if we change this, it's not adopted yet. Don't they fall in like under a grandfather?
Sort of.
So like,
when you do a
could we leave
subdivision,
them but move forward with?
No, so when you apply for a building permit, you have to meet the requirements of the building permit code at that time. So the garage dimension applies at the building permit. The subdivision standards, which they are grandfathered to, they get to create lots of a certain size, and then when they apply for houses, the houses then have to meet the code at that time. So so we're changing the code as it applies to a building permit, but not as it applies to the subdivision.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, it's up to you guys whether you want to support this change. I think it probably makes sense from a marketability and affordability standpoint that, people typically need one garage bay to store their junk and two for their cars. Or two for their junk and one for their car.
Or the golf cart.
Yeah.
So if we change it, or if we leave it what we wrote already, so does that put them in a pickle or something? I mean,
It
or
will
do they
limit-
just have to change their design?
They'll probably be building houses with 2-car garages on lots that are 60 feet wide.
But doesn't that kind of fall back to what we're trying to do here anyways, put everybody on a bus? We're trying to eliminate people driving, right?
Oh, okay.
Do buses even go to
Buses
McCormick
don't go to
roads?
McCormick.
But we should talk to the director of the transportation department.
That'll be effective.
Or they could get a bicycle.
Yeah. So
Subway. Light rail.
So you think that for affordability and for marketability, this is a good call?
I do. I think that a 60-foot lot, it's using 60 feet. The lot is not going to change dimension just because they can't build a house with a 3-car garage. They're probably going to build a smaller house on a bigger lot rather than a house that has a slightly higher valuation and is going to bring in more property tax revenue. And
Oh, that's right. These will be worth more and bring in more property tax revenue, right?
right.
Right. Okay.
I mean, garages aren't taxed as much as living space, but they are certainly.
But still,
It is square footage in
yeah.
the structure.
But it should always be about appearance as opposed to property value. Or property tax.
Always?
Not always, but it's nice to have a community that looks good.
Yep.
That's what we've been working on for the last year and a half. So,
Yeah, most of these look like they have 3. That's that side entrance one on a corner lot.
Yeah.
Which is also something we now allow per the draft code, if you remember that discussion. So
Where is this?
this is in Gig Harbor off of Borgen, I think. You come in off of Borgen, kind of just past Costco. Costco's there. This is just a little further out.
Okay. Same developer?
Yeah, all the same builders that we have at McCormick, Parcel B. I think Century and Mainview are there. I don't know about Garrett and forget the other one.
Look at that difference. If you go back down between what's on the right of where you were just at.
This?
Nope, the other right. There we go. Look how many more trees are in there compared to what's on the left.
It is an older neighborhood.
Yeah, but I wish we could do that again.
I know.
But look at the people per acre and the cost of us providing services.
Yeah, but something to be said for what it looks like in 30, 50 years from now.
I don't have to worry about the trees. I'm all set.
Wow.
But keep in mind, I mean,
Oh,
there's
that's
trees
kids.
being planted all over here that are 3 years old, and so
Yeah,
it's
but
not that there
where
aren't
the
trees
kids
here.
gonna play? They don't have any yards. They don't have a tree to
Got
climb.
parks.
Oh God.
They can play in the garage.
They don't play. That's full of junk.
Oh, that's true.
and they're replacing kids with cars apparently.
Yeah.
There's actually a really great segue into what I was going to talk about at the end of the meeting, which was my trip to Japan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But anyway, we'll finish this first.
I can see both sides.
I definitely prefer that on the right.
This is probably 3, 4, maybe 4 units per acre.
Yeah. It
How?
looks so much nicer.
And what, like today at McCormick, what do you do per acre?
I would say the newest project, I mean, keep in mind on the new one, let me zoom back in, you've got the golf course tracks and you have these swaths in between the houses that right now they look scraggly because they were, they just cleared it. But as this stuff fills in, There's still quite a bit of open space here.
Oh, that's down 12.
I would say this is probably in the 8 units per acre range.
Okay, and the new development off Feegley, is that also 8 per acre or 6?
The boundary line adjustment just showed up on the county parcel map, so I can tell you how big this parcel is, and we'll divide it by 84. So that's 17.08 acres.
They had originally planned 180 in there.
Should be.
Actually, is that only 4.8 units per acre?
No. Is there a lot set aside in critical areas or something?
84. Yeah, there's a stormwater pond. I mean, if we go back to the plan, yeah, this is a creek that's protected with all the trees, and then there's a huge stormwater pond over here. Looks like there's also some buffer on. Oh, and there's a buffer on the north side here, and there's roads. I mean, roads take up a significant share of that as well. So 84 units per 17.48 acres is 4.8.
So it's gross, not net.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, how much?
If you just counted up, if you subtracted the roads and the critical areas, I guess it's probably closer to 8 or 9.
How many houses are going out there on Glenwood?
It's Stetson Heights,
Is that what it's called?
that big,
That sounds like a
the mud pit.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's 299 are in what's approved so far. They're going to still have a tract set aside for future development that might have another 100.
Is there a picture of the top of that?
Just pull up a picture.
What do you mean a picture?
Like,
Close
can
up
you
on
just
the-
see?
I've got a plan that I can show you.
Pull up a close up of the moon. Looks about the same.
Subdivision.
Way too far from 95 in King County.
2014.
Their comp plan.
So have they started building out there or doing anything, or is
They're still putting in their improvements. They've just been managing stormwater
okay.
this whole time. Revised plans. Okay, this is what that looks like. So you've got these steep parts that are going to be treed, stormwater ponds, and then the big wetland complex here is protected.
What direction's that?
Probably.
Where are you at here?
This is,
The Stetson Heights, correct?
that is, where did it go? Oh, it's not cleared in this photo, but you can see the outline of this shape here.
Gotcha.
I think it looks different if you zoom in here. You can see that's when you're going on Glenwood. This is the big construction site. That's
Yeah.
Who's the builder there?
I think D.R. Horton is buying this once the lots are finished, but the developer is a couple of private individuals who applied for it. So that's what's going on. So are we comfortable with the design guidelines moving forward for a hearing with this additional change and the changes that were presented, or are there any other questions you have at this time?
Well, I'm not comfortable with it myself, but if the majority says that that's the route we should go, then I'll bow down to that. But
You could also change it and change it to a different number somewhere in between there if you wanted to provide some flexibility, but not.
Mark, are you talking about the side entrance, or are you talking about the garage?
we're talking about the 3-car garage on a 60-foot
Okay.
wide lot. Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Nick, did I understand correctly? So they want it to be 60 in order to put in a 3-car garage?
So if your lot is only 40 feet and up to 60, you can put in a 2-car garage. If it's above 60, you can do a 3-car garage.
60. Okay.
And they're currently mapped out at 60.
Some of them are. I mean, when you get into a corner lot situation where the road's in a corner, I mean, you're going to have a pie-shaped piece of lot that might be 63. I mean, it's not consistently 60 feet, but I think that's generally what they're aiming for on some of their lots to allow 3-car garages.
So Nick, why did we make this change to 74, if you remember, in the first place?
So we were trying to figure out, as part of the form-based code, we wanted to allow narrower lots, but we didn't want to allow narrower lots with dominant garages as the architectural feature.
Exactly.
So we did the math and we said if the setbacks are 5 feet on either side, so we need at least 10 feet for setbacks. If you're going to have a 2-car garage that's 24 feet wide, how much house plus that 10 feet, where does the number come out? So that's how we got to, if you've got a 40-foot lot, you can get a garage down to 10 feet per bay, so that's 10 feet of house, 20 feet of garage, and 10 feet of setbacks. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio garage to house. On the 3-car garage, I think we just added the extra 12 feet. I don't remember, honestly. I'm trying to recreate this for you, but I mean that was the thinking that went into it: is what's the setback, and what's the ratio of garage to house?
Because we were all in agreement that we didn't want a garage dominant face in the house.
So if you do 5, 30 for the 3-car garage, 5 for the setback. If you wanted to keep that 2-to-1 ratio, you would need 45. Yeah, you're at 55 feet. Gives you the same ratio that you have on a 40-foot lot with a 2-car garage in terms of garage to house. So I think going to 60 is not a 60-foot lot with a 3-car garage where the bays are 10 feet is actually going to have more house to garage ratio than the smaller 40-foot lot with a 2-car garage. If that makes sense. This is not a science, it's just... And I guess the only other thing I'll say is when you think about the front of a house where you're going to have... I'm going to go back to this main view example. If you're going to have a room on the front of a house plus a door that's presumably going into a hallway, that hallway is probably going to be 4 to 6 feet wide, and that room's going to be at least 10 feet wide and probably more like 12 or 14. So you also have to think about if you leave too little space next to the garage, you're building unusable space at the front of the house. So the interior space has to be big enough that it can be put to some use. And I'll tell you, when you go to these houses at McCormick Woods, this front room, I toured one of these houses just to see what it looked like, and they said this is your den, but it seemed like a room that you would never spend any time in because it's so far removed from the rest of the house because it's forward, and unless you can, it makes more sense as like a guest bedroom or something where you can actually have enough space to do something, and if it gets too narrow, it's hard to use. I wonder if they have a layout. Let me pull out the floor plan here. Yeah, see, there's the den and the foyer. They tuck the bathroom in there and then the stairs before you get to the main part of the house. And this is a small room. It's probably too small to be a bedroom, but
Wow. So wouldn't the room end up being bigger if we required a larger
exactly
lot
that.
width?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. So the other way to think about it is, so if you have on a 3-car garage, if you have 5-foot setback, a 30-foot garage, or a 36-foot garage, it's in that range, then you really need a 20 feet of living space and a 5-foot setback. So that puts you right at 60. That's with 10-foot garage bays. If they go 12-foot garage bays, then they're encroaching on that habitable space. So I think it is viable to do it at 60 feet, I guess, is what I'm saying, and still have a functional room up in the front of the house.
But just barely.
Just barely. I wish this had a scale on the plans. I can measure it.
But what do we care what's on the inside of the house? Why do we care what the size of that room is? If we're trying to look what the outside is going to be.
I think that you have to provide regulations that are feasible, and you can't ask somebody to build something that can't be put to any use. I mean, if this room gets too small because of the width, I mean, you're not going to turn it into a closet and still have windows going into your closet. I mean, what do you use a space like that for? Because we require them to have the house projecting forward of the garage. The garage is required to be recessed, and so this has to be wide enough to make some economic sense.
I guess I'm all right with it. The one thing that I would like to ask though is, what point do where's the line where we say, okay, now we're back to 74? Or are we going to just change this to 60?
The next time they want to change it.
I think the product that we're getting out there right now, even before these regulations were in place, it's a good product. It's much better than what we saw 10 years ago, which led us to create some of these regulations. So I don't see somebody, hopefully they're not going to go back to building just the really cheap, most square footage possible at the least cost type houses like they were in 2006 and 2007.
Well, seemed like we were more concerned with outside McCormick Wood development, not what was going on.
Well, except for the ridge. I mean, in the woods we weren't concerned, but north of woods we had a much lower priced housing product. But even when you zoom into, there's this development in Bremerton here, which is just outside the city. But even these houses, they're on small lots, but they're a lot nicer than what you saw on the ridge, and they're similar in square footage and price.
So the question I would have then, so are we talking about a long-term change from 74 down to 60?
Yeah, I think we should try it and see if we have bad results, and if we have bad results, we can revisit it. But it's good that we look at all these products and see what's actually being built and check in on that periodically. I don't have to put you in the van anymore either. I can just drive you around here.
Well, and is this just designed to standards for McCormick?
No, this is citywide.
Moving forward.
Not that there's
And
not
so-
a lot of lots citywide that are 60.
That model home is probably what we'll get, is what you're saying, Nick, right?
In a lot of cases, I mean, I think if you go to
Can you show us the aesthetics one more time?
of this one,
Yeah, I know that nobody wants to. I don't think anybody wants to sacrifice aesthetics. Okay. Just
I mean,
checking.
and remember, the code already requires things like architectural grade garage doors. You have to do certain things to the house, and there's a menu where you can either do a tricolored paint scheme, you can do an architectural grade garage door where you have like the windows or kind of a fancier garage door. You can put trellises over the garage door with plants growing on them. I mean, there's a lot of different features we're asking you to put into a house design now to really just make it look a little bit better than just the most basic thing that we were getting. So it's
So do you know what size lot that's?
this is a
space?
rendering, and I'm guessing that the house that's next to this would be in view if it was not a rendering, but this is marketing materials, not an actual house. I mean, you can see, that's not a picture I can open, but in this photo you can see, these things are
Stacked in there.
lined up on a street. But
So if I heard correctly earlier, you were saying most of those lots up in McCormick right now are roughly are 60 feet wide?
in McCormick North, they're mostly 40 feet wide. In McCormick Woods, in the newer phases, they're anywhere from 50 for the two-car garage sites, probably up to 70. But they have some that are at 60 in, we go down to Parcel B. I mean, you can see that this one is kind of a corner lot because there's a shared driveway that goes across that. So it's a little bit bigger. These curved lots that are on the radius are a little bit wider. And so there's a mix of widths in here where you're probably going to have two-car garages throughout and then a three-car garage as you go around the corner.
Right. Okay. So What I heard earlier, but I may have misunderstood, is that McCormick would like to see this drop down to 60 so that they could include more 3-car garages.
Correct.
But at 60, it's a 2-car garage. It has to be
Currently,
greater
yes.
than, well, not even currently, it's 74. We're suggesting changing it to 60. So this wouldn't give them the 3 they're looking for.
Well, it would.
It would.
It would at 60.
Yeah.
60.
So this lot,
At
for
61,
instance,
yes, but we're talking majority are 60.
we measure lot width at the midpoint, so when you have a wedge-shaped lot like this one is 71 feet, this would not be able to have a 3-car garage under the existing regulations, but under the change, because it would be more than 60, they could do a 3-car garage, and it's not a 60-foot lot, it's a 71-foot lot, where they can't do a 3-car garage currently.
This is greater than or equal to. I don't know if that's clear from here, but that's greater than or
Yeah, I
equal to
noticed
60
that.
feet.
Okay.
It's
so
strike through
then-
and underline.
So that's a, oh yeah, I just thought that's how it's a strike through. Well then perhaps we need to monkey with the numbers because right now both fall under 60. You can either have 2 or you can have 3. Cause
Right. You can do a 2-car garage. I guess it needs to say more than 50. You're right. So for a 2-car garage, you need a greater than 40-foot lot, and for a 3-car garage, you need a greater than 60-foot lot. It doesn't need an upper limit.
So what change?
So we're just going to delete the maximum, and so
both greater than or equal
if you're
to
less than 40 feet, you only get a 1-car garage. If you're greater than 40 feet, you can have a 2-car garage.
or equal.
Yeah, and if you're greater or equal to 60 feet, you can have a 3-car garage.
Is this what we're talking about? Is that the piece that everybody in McCormick Woods is having a hard time with?
No.
What is that one?
I can show you here in just a minute, but let's get through this issue first. So any other comments on this?
No, I'm good with it.
We ready to go? All right, they'll be there on the 7th.
Wait,
So
what was the determination? Are we okay with that change or?
I was.
all right.
Well, were you guys? I mean, I don't think we came up with a.
Yeah, I think we're happy to make sure everybody's good or bad. We can weigh it or not weigh it.
I'm not a fan, but
Okay.
Yeah. I'll go with it.
You know, ultimately what happens at these subdivisions as well is people find their house plan and then they figure out what lots they can put that house plan on and they have to choose a lot. So it's very likely that somebody may say, I want this 2-car garage, but I want this lot that is it could have a 3-car garage, but I just want a little bit more room. And so it's not going to happen in every case.
Okay.
It gives flexibility to the person who's trying to match a buyer with a floor plan with a lot.
I just remember when we were discussing this the first time around, we were almost appalled at how much smaller McCormick would want to make everything. And to go from 74 to 60 is kind of like, have we just become desensitized because of everything going on in terms of building? I mean, we set 74 for a reason last
There was a
time.
reason. Yeah.
And to drop it by 14 feet, that's huge.
I mean, you can drop it by less if that's the recommendation.
65?
I would stick with even numbers. It's easier for my brain.
What's half? What's meeting in the middle?
66.
And a half.
Cause some trouble down there.
So if you had 12-foot bays, I'm just doing the math here, a 66-foot lot would give you the 5-foot setback, a 36-foot garage, a 20-foot piece of habitable house, and a 5-foot setback. So 66 gives you the wider 3-car garage as opposed to the 10-foot bays. So
You got
66,
You got 5 feet on each side, though, right? You're
Yeah.
talking 10 feet,
10 feet of setback,
36,
36 of house, and 20 of living
36 of
space.
garage, and 20 of living space.
Yeah. That seems reasonable to me as well.
We just made the garage larger.
Essentially.
Yeah. So in this picture, like I said, I don't know whether this garage bay is a 12-foot parking stall or a 10-foot parking stall. You see 3-car garage, and you may see some 11-foot garage
But it's
stalls.
12, like panels on the
They're
front of the
three
garage.
10-foot bays.
If there are 3 10-foot bays, then it's a 60-foot lot is enough room. If they go with a wider bay, which
I'm only laughing because I'm thinking about, it's like you have the 2-car garage that's functionally a 1-car garage, and you
Yeah.
have the 3-car garage that's functionally a 2-car garage.
oh yeah, and because you got
Never
storage shelving in
3
there.
cars, and typically.
No.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So if the recommendation is 66, we can bring forward an ordinance that's at 66. I'm sure they'll take every bit of help they can get.
Will you run the numbers again one more time for just sticking with 74 and a 2-car?
A 2-car?
As it is, as it's drafted now.
74 is a 3-car.
No, up to 74.
right, because currently a 73-foot lot has to have a 2-car garage on it, right? That's what you're saying.
Yes, I'm just
Yeah.
curious what.
It would be, so you'd have, the minimum setback is 5 feet. The garage is going to be 20 to 24 feet. The other setback is 5 feet, so that's leaving you with like 44 feet of house or
Or bigger yards.
40 feet of house or bigger yards.
The real problem being, not problem, but the real issue being, this is kind of like a good problem to have. Like the challenge is 20 foot of garage for a 40-foot house, right? That's really where the issue is. This is kind of like a nice problem to discuss.
Exactly. Yeah, the upper end of the 2-car garage range
Yeah.
isn't an issue. It's
Thinking
the-
about how many tight houses where the
Exactly.
yeah. So this is,
You know what? I've got an idea for how to figure out how big these garages actually are. I'm just going to look up the plans for one of these streets. Anyway, you can continue discussing while I try to find one of these. Olivine, I believe.
What do you think, Steph? Are you thinking more yard? Is that your desire?
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Definitely more just outdoor space.
But these people
But
that are buying
definitely-
these houses
That's a
already don't
3-car
care about,
garage.
don't seem to care about outdoor space.
Is it because they don't care because they can't get anything else? I mean,
Well, if they wanted more, they could choose a style of house that had a 2-car garage, and they'd have more farm space.
but I also don't want a big garage forward house out there.
Yeah.
So
that
one-
was what we had all agreed on.
So one garage door is 16'3", the other one is 8'3", but that's the door width, not the actual garage width. Unfortunately, it doesn't give me a total span here, but that leads me to believe that we are dealing with 30 feet of garage.
And how much house?
Well, on a 60-foot lot, it'd be
This
20 foot.
den is 7 and 5.5, or 7 foot 5.5 inches. Plus, you have a hallway that is about 6.5 feet wide.
Okay.
So that's about 13 feet of house next to probably 30 feet of garage.
43, 5-foot setbacks, 53.
And there's also wall. The wall is 6 inches thick or 5 inches thick, whatever
Right.
it ends up at with siding and roof eaves and whatnot. So,
What's the square footage of this house in general?
You're really getting into the details today.
I'm mainly
Well, the
laughing
bigger-
about the developers and how they're
The bigger square foot,
trying
the better the tax.
garages.
We're gonna what?
We're gonna give them all garages. Everything's a 3-car garage.
I know the other one we were looking at was over 4,000 square feet. Without even the garage, you could fit 4 of my houses in that house.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these are 3,500 to 4,000 square feet for these.
Well, that little front room is where the maid lives.
Au pair.
Oh, there we go.
It doesn't say on this plan, said I'd have to dig a little deeper to find that information. Maybe it's on the, let's that's not the right one.
Did they fill out their master permit application with purple ink?
Including porch, deck, garage. Once you just do the habitable space, it's 1,687 on the main floor, 21 on the second floor, so about 3,800 square feet before you count the garage and the covered porch.
And that was the cost of the house, not the property included, correct?
Oh, I have no idea. It's the valuation of the house, which is, it's from a table from the IBC that tells you that per square foot, this is how much it costs to build a house.
Gotcha.
That's how we calculate our building permit fees. So, 60, 66, 74, no change.
If we didn't change things, what would happen? What's the implication?
We would probably just get. We would probably have more two-car garage houses, and they would have lower assessed valuations because of the lack of square footage. So it's a small.
Or would they build a larger house?
I don't think people don't go much over 3,700 square feet of house. I mean, once you go above that, you're into a different territory. And at 5,000 square feet, you have to do fire sprinklers, and so you're certainly not going to that level.
So,
49.
so then if they didn't build more house, that would mean with a two-car garage, they'd leave more green space?
More green space.
They would leave more lawn and
Place for the kids to play.
It would be interesting to know what the difference, because you keep talking about the taxes, what the difference in tax would be. I mean, what really is the amount? Is it?
Like 300 less a year?
Yeah.
It's so funny, I looked at the agenda and I'm like, we're probably going to talk about the trees longer.
I know.
This is a surprise.
so I'm pulling up the valuation table that we use to calculate permit fees. If it decides it wants to load here. For August 2019, which is the most recent one, I believe we're looking at a type 5A construction, residential R3, 1 and 2 family. So the valuation is about $128 a square foot for residential construction. So your taxes are based on the total valuation of your house, and a garage bay is an extra 200 square feet of living space plus some second floor space above it potentially.
So they don't distinguish between habitable and non-habitable?
I'm sure
Or
the
it's so
assessor
little, it
does,
doesn't
but
matter?
this is the best number I can give you, and that's going to change the valuation of the house, and your taxes then are applied to based on the valuation of the house plus the land. And so the house is valued at a higher rate per square foot than the land.
Would it be obnoxious to just say 70 feet and not split the difference? And I'm just wondering.
You can make any recommendation you want.
Well, I think that we're struggling with this because we don't really want 60.
Yeah.
And so I
exactly
think
right.
let's just do what, I mean, I'm sure the city council can change it, correct?
They will.
They will. So we should just go with what we feel. I mean, because we talked about this before, and obviously
Right.
that's
This is
what we
voted
wanted.
on.
You know, because we felt that was the best. We don't always, and maybe we don't think like we should, but I don't think it's always about what the revenue is going to be. It's about what things are going to look like, and if
Well,
I don't know, curb appeal
Curb appeal,
is
absolutely. A
huge.
neighborhood appeal,
That
definitely.
is huge.
I
So-
vote 70.
I
So-
vote stick
I'll
with
give
one.
them 4 feet.
So I do think we should change that upper limit though, because you pointed out that you should be able to do a 2-car garage on a wider lot if you want to. So that was not the intent of this. And actually, you know what? This is okay. It actually says the maximum number of side-by-side stalls. It doesn't say.
But you have to do 3.
It doesn't say that you have to do 3. It just says that's the maximum when your lot is within this range. So
Yeah,
I think I was
already
just
changed that
reading.
back.
Yeah. Good, thanks.
You just have to make sure the number isn't repeated.
Right. So, yeah, so you want to keep it at 74? I mean,
Yeah, that's what I am most comfortable with.
All right.
Fine by me.
I'm there.
There we go.
Works
No
for me.
change. All right.
all right. Well, we're all done with that. Is there anything, I'll let the chair ask. Taking over here.
That's fine. Okay, so
The gentleman in the
Any questions or comments?
Well, I could maybe make a comment if it's all right. If
Yeah.
you want to have the
come on
speaker
up. Yeah.
Okay, well, my name's Jim Drummond. I'm a resident of McCormick
Have a
Woods.
seat.
And my main interest is in trying to, maintain as many trees as we can in McCormick Woods. But I'm also concerned with setbacks and areas of, what do you call it, like a barrier of trees. But I know we can't have that all around a development. But if it is a development, it'd be nice if we could keep a nice sort of protective belt of trees between the main thoroughfares and the platted areas of the subdivision. So I'm just sort of a interested citizen, and of course the whole problem is this Tract A has brought out a lot of this to light, unfortunately. And I know you can't do much about it, I don't think. Well, the builder sounds like he's willing to make some compromises, which I'm glad to hear that. But I used to be on the Parks Commission in Paulsbo for many years, and I know how these meetings go and these discussions go. It reminds me of the times I spent on the commission up there. But anyway, I appreciate all your people's hard work, especially the volunteers and staff, and commend all your efforts, and just keep working towards the goals you are to improve our environment and our living areas here. Thank you very much for letting me say a few words.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming.
So nice that you're here.
And that reminds me, you had asked about this development, just so you're aware. The city received a plat application for developing Parcel A. Parcel A had never been part of any of the previous plats. It's just raw land that is owned by McCormick Communities. So they submitted a plat, and it did preserve some buffers. This is the landscape plan, and so McCormick Woods Drive is here. Old Clifton Road is out here. And this buffer, I think, is anywhere from 40 to 60 feet, depending on where you're at. It's a little bigger at the corner, a little narrower along McCormick Woods Drive. And so we've received, I think, 100 letters or so on this, and they're all in the record. And the developer is talking about making some revisions to the plat, but I think the community really wants to preserve the tree landscape as you're coming into the development. And so
Absolutely.
Right there.
this
Right
area
there.
over here is about, I think this is like a 40-foot or 50-foot buffer before you'd get to the houses, but that's probably 2 to 3 rows of trees in before you get to where they would be clearing. And
Yeah, that's
so they are trying to preserve some of these, but there's a road that has to be cut in here, and there's also other improvements that have to be made. So we'll see how that application evolves.
So can you just turn into McCormick Woods off of Old Clifton with your map here? So just coming into into
The other way.
Woods itself.
This way?
Yeah, yeah.
Now turn east.
So first of all, let me go to the, when you go to this map, I think it's important to understand where the property line actually begins. So their buffer is measured from the property line here, which the county's website has been real slow lately. Uh-oh.
Anybody else get the message about solar activity going to affect your cable?
No.
It's not related to coronavirus.
So that's the property line now. And you really can't see very well, but the edge of the road is probably here. So a lot of the lawn and some of these trees are already in the right of way, and so you're going another 50 feet back from that, which is I'll try to guesstimate what 50 feet is. I'm guessing maybe like this. That's 40 feet. So just 20% further. So about there to there, you are getting a band of trees preserved. But I think there's a desire that more trees be preserved, and also there's a handful of issues being raised, and that'll go to the hearing examiner once the application is complete and everything's in order. But my understanding is we have revisions coming, so we'll see what happens.
But there's open discussion going on currently with the developer.
Yes.
I guess there's a GoFundMe account too where they're raising money to
do what?
what
Buy
are
it?
they doing? Do you know
Buy
about
it
that?
from the
The
developer?
GoFundMe account,
Beg pardon?
like to hire the group out there in McCormick Woods. They started a GoFundMe account to help.
Yeah,
I think they're trying to get a.
I don't know. A lot of people are concerned with the wild animals in the area, and they're looking
okay.
about hiring some expert who could give some kind of testimony, I guess,
Oh, all right.
investigation.
I don't think it's. So I just know part of the conversation, but I know how they talk about. They want the trees left, and I think that's great. But I think back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, maybe even longer, when they started putting these houses out there, how, the citizens at that time didn't want any houses out there, and they wanted the land, and so it's kind of funny now that those people live there, but they want to preserve the land. I get it. I understand.
Yep. So, with that, we can adjourn the meeting. I was going to show you guys some things from Japan if you're interested.
Yeah.
Are we adjourned?
Not
Chair,
yet. Not yet.
I'll be absent in our next meeting. Apologies. Can't make it.
Thanks for letting us know.
All right. Okay, so we're adjourned. Thank you.